What's up everyone and welcome back to the World History Channel. Before we begin, please hit the subscribe button today. Let's get started. Dramatic facts about Catherine the Great, lusty lover and iron-fisted ruler. Who was Catherine the Great? You probably know the name, but you probably don't know much about the fascinating woman who goes by it. In reality, the Russian Empress truly earned her the Great epithet, though her achievements weren't necessarily good. Born a minor German princess, Catherine married the heir to the Russian throne, tossed him out of power, and became a powerful ruler in her own right. Many Catherine the Great biographies mention her vigorous foreign and domestic policies as well as her tyrannical tendencies. But when she wasn't ruling, what did Catherine the Great do? She studied philosophy, took many lovers, and collected art. She also toured her kingdom, wrote letters to the most famous people of the time, and turned her court into a cultural center when she wasn't pursuing her passions. Like many rulers, the Empress's life is haunted by rumors. In this case, though, the truth about Catherine the Great is perhaps even more dramatic than the hearsay that follows her even today. She ousted and maybe killed her husband. Despite the fact that Catherine was not born Russian, she still succeeded in assuming power. Her husband, Tsar Peter III, isn't remembered as a great Russian ruler. In fact, it's just the opposite. He preferred all things German. His dad had territories in northern Germany, and tried to make the Orthodox Church conform to Lutheran traditions. He even made peace with Prussia, Russia's arch-rival. Needless to say, he was extremely unpopular, but he wasn't in charge of Russia for very long. 6 months after he assumed the throne, Catherine made Peter abdicate. He was then detained and perished, allegedly after a drunken fight. Did Catherine direct the demise of her husband? Nobody knows, but she definitely benefited from it, and was likely happy to be free from the loveless marriage. She was rumored to have a large sexual appetite. After Catherine the Great died, a rumor circulated that the Empress's known sexual appetite didn't stop at men. According to the infamous rumor, Catherine died while attempting to have sex with a horse. However, experts agree this was nothing more than an attempt to damage her legacy as Empress of Russia. In reality, she died after having a stroke in bed. History, on the other hand, agrees that Catherine the Great had a lot of human lovers. One of those lovers was Grigory Orlov, who helped Catherine overthrow her husband. Another famous consort of Catherine the Great was Sergei Saltykov, who she claimed was the real father of her first son in her own memoirs. She wanted to restore the Byzantine Empire. The former Byzantine Empire had been under Ottoman Turk control for centuries by the time Catherine the Great became the ruler of Russia. But Catherine wanted to restore the Greek monarchy regardless, and developed the Greek project to do so. The project included plans to put her grandson, aptly named Constantine, on the newly restored Greek throne. A second iteration of the project outlined plans for the Kingdom of Dacia, which many assumed was designed for Catherine's lover Grigory Potemkin. Though Catherine remained dedicated to the grand plans of the Greek project, ultimately her efforts failed. However, the treaty ending the conflict between Russia and the Ottoman Turks gave Russia control of the Black Sea, a politically important prize, if not the glamorous one envisioned by the Greek project. Catherine's son might not have been her husband's. It's well known that Catherine took a number of lovers after her husband passed, but she might have enjoyed an affair or two before it too. In fact, one of her consorts might have actually been the true father of her son, the future Paul I. Catherine and Peter's marriage remained unconsummated for years, as Peter suffered from phimosis, a condition which can make intercourse uncomfortable. Eventually, Peter underwent surgery to correct the condition, and Catherine the Great became pregnant. But was Paul the true born heir? By that point, Catherine had taken her first lover, Sergei Saltykov. In her own memoirs, the Empress hints that Paul wasn't Peter's son. Catherine's best friend tested her potential lovers. Meet Countess Praskovia Bruce, one of Catherine's best friends since her teenage years. The two were so close for decades that Catherine dedicated an entire section of her memoirs to the Countess. Allegedly, however, Catherine's friendship came with a hefty responsibility. Giacomo Casanova claims that Catherine requested Praskovia to test potential partners. This test was reportedly also the end of the pair's friendship, as Catherine found the Countess in bed with a man she had already fallen for. She had a secret love child by her lover Gregory Orloff. Shortly before staging a coup and becoming Empress in her own right, Catherine gave birth to a secret love child with her lover, Grigory Orloff. The baby was named Alexei Bobrinsky. Despite the fact that, as an adult, Alexei ran up big debts, Catherine indulged him and gave him the freedom to do generally as he pleased. She was pen pals with Voltaire. Catherine, who was dubbed an enlightened despot, enjoyed reading the works of Enlightenment philosophers like Voltaire in France. Even though they never actually met, the two began writing to each other in a fascinating series of letters for 15 years. Voltaire and Catherine got along famously. As historiographer of the Roman Empire, Voltaire helped shape the image of Catherine the Great as a wise and just monarch. While Voltaire supported Catherine politically, their relationship was also intimate. Voltaire had a portrait of the ruler in his bedroom. She came close to perishing on the toilet. Catherine the Great sort of perished on the toilet. In 1796, at age 67, she got up to go to the bathroom, sat down on the toilet, and then had a stroke. The Empress was carried back to her bed by her servants, who then placed her on a mattress, where she actually passed away. Although her fatal stroke happened on the commode, she technically passed in bed. Catherine was a pioneer in promoting vaccines. Catherine the Great was a proactive monarch. She was very interested in public health and was eager to protect herself and her people against the ravages of contagious smallpox, especially since Tsar Peter II had perished from the disease. In 1768, Catherine had herself and her son inoculated, and both lived smallpox-free lives. This helped fellow Russians see that early variolation was actually a good idea. Catherine's aunt-in-law took her son and raised him. Catherine's first marriage was dominated by the Russian Empress Elizabeth, who raised her nephew Peter as her heir and married him to Catherine. Despite the fact that Catherine initially won the Empress's affection, their relationship soured when Catherine finally gave birth. Instead of allowing Catherine time to bond with her newborn, Elizabeth swept him up and rarely let Catherine see her son. In fact, Catherine was only allowed to visit Paul on occasion, as Elizabeth essentially raised the child as her own, permanently disrupting a potentially healthy mother-child relationship. Catherine is a German princess by birth and has no Russian claim. Catherine, née Sophie, who was born the princess of a small German state, had her work cut out for her when she moved to her adopted country, Russia. Catherine's father impressed on her the importance of adapting to the Russian culture and, most crucially, impressing the Empress. Catherine ultimately succeeded on both fronts. Empress Elizabeth grew a soft spot for her future niece-in-law, while the latter recovered from a horrible illness. Catherine, on the other hand, studied Russian and eventually converted to Russian Orthodoxy before getting married to Peter. She built a massive art collection while living in the Winter Palace. Although she moved into the Winter Palace with her late husband Peter, Catherine was the one who turned the palace into a decadent home for the art she loved so much. Catherine became one of the greatest art collectors of all time, and even built an addition to the Winter Palace to house her collection. These works of art included the countless paintings she purchased and pieces she commissioned for her court. Catherine the Great, also known as Sophia von Holtzerbst, was a woman who was both revered and despised at the same time. She was remembered as a forward-thinking patron of the arts and Enlightenment ideals while also being a ruthless political operator. Catherine the Great was born Sophie von Holtzerbst. She was a small German princess who rose to power with charm, intelligence, ambition, and a fair amount of brutality. Married to the inept and unpopular Tsar Peter III of Russia, Catherine engineered a coup that led to his abdication, and possibly his untimely death shortly afterward, thus paving the way for her 34-year reign. Catherine's rise was the stuff of legend, a foreign-born woman who outmaneuvered the entrenched Russian aristocracy to become an absolute monarch. Her rule was filled with both grand visions and cold calculations. She implemented sweeping reforms, expanded the Russian Empire significantly, and dabbled in progressive Enlightenment policies, all while maintaining an iron grip on her subjects. Her sexual exploits have become the stuff of scandalous lore, most notably the unfounded rumor that she died attempting intercourse with a horse, an outrageous fabrication intended to smear her image posthumously. In point of fact, Catherine passed away in her bed after collapsing on the toilet and suffering a stroke at the age of 67. She had numerous lovers, including powerful nobles like Grigory Orlov and Grigory Potemkin, some of whom played important roles in her political machinations, so the scandalous rumor about her libido was not entirely unfounded. In fact, Orlov helped her overthrow Peter III and fathered a secret love child with her, Alexei Bobrinsky, who she generously supported despite his later financial recklessness. Catherine's bedroom was also managed like a State Department, allegedly with help from her close friend Countess Praskovia Bruce, who was said to test Catherine's prospective lovers before they reached the Empress's chambers. While that story is likely apocryphal, it illustrates just how much intrigue surrounded her personal life. Beyond her amorous adventures, Catherine had a sharp intellect and an intense passion for culture. She corresponded with Voltaire for 15 years, exchanging letters that revealed her fascination with Enlightenment thought. Though they never met, their mutual respect was deep. Voltaire even kept her portrait in his bedroom. Catherine's court became a hub for the arts and intellectual exchange, and she transformed the Winter Palace into a sprawling museum-like residence filled with the finest works of European art, many of which are now housed in the Hermitage Museum. Her cultural legacy remains immense. She was one of history's most prodigious art collectors. Yet for all her sophistication, Catherine could be harsh and pragmatic. Her rule was absolute, and she crushed revolts with unflinching severity. One of her most ambitious goals was the restoration of the Byzantine Empire via the so-called Greek project, which aimed to establish a new Hellenic monarchy under her grandson Constantine. Though the plan ultimately failed, it underscored Catherine's imperial ambitions and her willingness to challenge the Ottoman Empire, a long-standing rival. However, Russia gained control of the Black Sea in the ensuing conflicts with the Ottomans, a significant geopolitical victory. The empire's borders were significantly extended by her expansionist policies, which included Crimea and a large portion of what is now Ukraine. On the domestic front, Catherine saw herself as a modernizer. She supported educational establishments, attempted to codify Russian law, albeit unsuccessfully, and implemented legal reforms. One of her most overlooked yet groundbreaking acts was her early support of vaccinations, specifically, the inoculation against smallpox. Catherine and her son Paul were vaccinated in 1768, long before it was common practice. This sent a strong message to the rest of Russia and probably saved a lot of lives. Despite such progressive actions, Catherine's relationship with her own son was strained. After his birth, Empress Elizabeth, Peter's aunt and Russia's ruler at the time, whisked baby Paul away and raised him as her own, denying Catherine the chance to bond with her child. This had long-term effects on both Paul's psyche and his relationship with his mother. It didn't help that Paul may not have even been Peter's son. Catherine's marriage to Peter III was cold and reportedly unconsummated for years due to Peter's medical condition, phimosis. When she finally became pregnant, she had already taken a lover, Sergei Saltykov, who she later claimed was Paul's true father. Catherine didn't just maneuver through personal betrayal and political uncertainty. She thrived in it. She knew how to win favor with the Russian people and her court. She converted to Russian Orthodoxy, learned the language, and adopted Russian customs to earn the approval of Empress Elizabeth and the Russian elite. Her ability to adapt and ingratiate herself into the fabric of Russian society, despite her foreign origins, was a remarkable feat of political savvy.